Hi there, traders. This is Bradley Gilbert with the FX Market Insight for the 27th of November. All right, we're sort of churning through the Asian session, and there isn't a hell of a lot of change from yesterday. Right, it's been a nice, orderly start. This is more sort of traditional, if anything. Back into the early 90s, each day would be a nice, calm day. The big events would cause some movement. So this is what we're sort of looking at the moment. Now, I've got a really nice feeling here about Euro. It just looks like it's just moving down in a very orderly fashion. We did have Draghi speaking yesterday, and he did mention he's noticed that growth is dropping in the Eurozone. So to me, it's probably where it topped out at 113.80, and we are set for a move down through 113. If anything, I think Euro looks like the nicest pair. And once again, when you come to the MyFX Trading Hub, I'll show you it's the one clear pair out of all the majors that has nice direction. Sterling, as you can see, just trading sideways in a rather large range, and you'd expect that to continue with Brexit. Dollar yen on the hourlies is showing a bit of life. It's popped up through 113 sort of figure and rallied 30 points. It has stalled up at this resistance line, but does move slowly with that dollar move that we're seeing on the dollar index, and I'll show you that in a second. The Aussie, okay, we had that sort of really narrowing range yesterday. And what you usually get with that, let me just move this line back, because this is actually a pretty good lesson for those traders who haven't seen this before. So if you get like contracting ranges where the range itself, you come in, you've got resistance on the top side, you've got support on the downside, you're thinking this thing's going to break out. If it gets really tight, generally it means there's no direction. And what generally happens from there, I mean, this is 9.5 times out of 10. It pops to the top side, takes out the stop losses there, pops to the downside, stop losses there, comes back and starts trading exactly where it was. We haven't had the full move to the downside, but it does have all the hallmarks for that sort of move. The Kiwi, well, the Kiwi's starting to show signs of fatigue. We had the retail sales figures yesterday a little bit weak. Had the currency down around 67.60. It slowly climbed to the top side as well. Ahead of those Draghi sort of speeches, and now it's sort of drifting lower with a slightly weaker trade balance. But once again, these are really good trading conditions because it's really nice and orderly. There's no rush. Dollar CAD, well, oil at $51. We did have those really strong CPI figures Friday. I don't think dollar CAD knows what it's doing. Okay, it's jamming between 131.80, 132 sort of 60, 132.80, like a 200-point range here. It's just banging away. To me, there's no real clear direction. Oil looks like it's stabilising around $50, but that's anyone's guess at this point. I'm going with the Bank of Canada, and that's potential rate hiking situations coming up in Canada. Now, let me just flick you over to the while I'm there, this is what I want to do is give you a look at the US dollar. Sorry, let me just come back to where I was, but just have a look at the dollar here on. A couple of different pairs. So instead of just looking at the US dollar index, right, which is against the basket of currencies, the euro and sterling, as I always say, making up 70%. So it's a little bit higher. Euro's lower, obviously, so that gives it a little bit of a boost, but it is slowly climbing through 97, the figure. It's not a real huge move, and you can see how dollar yen is slowly trying to go with it. Dollar Swiss edging up just fractionally, and dollar CAD just choppy as it is, but still going with that slightly dollar move. Now, this is by no means a big dollar move, but I tell you what it is set up for. It is set up for if we get something out of the Fed or a Fed official or really strong US numbers, this is set up for a really solid move to the top side. Okay, now, equity markets, this is where I'll connect the US dollar components. If you look over here at the equity markets, I'd say if we had weaker equities, we might have seen a bit more of a rush to the safe haven, the US dollar, but we did have a bit of a relief rally on the equities, US equities, and that's sort of trickling through the Japanese equities, and I suspect we'll go through into the European equities there as well. So just keep an eye on that. We haven't really connected the dots yet with the US dollar, but it is starting to edge higher and showing signs of, once again, the core fundamentals in the US are strong, and that should dominate over all other pairs at this point. All right, so there we are. Now, let me just come back. I just want to get back onto the major news pages. Got my snapshot of my diving there in the background. Let me just clear this. All right, so when we are looking at the major pairs, just keep an eye on, obviously, the dollar yuan, right? There's been no talk or any news about any fresh tariffs in China. It does look like it's found sort of fair value around 6.94, but you know what? It has a very close correlation with the dollar index. And that's why I like to have these two pairs or instruments up here. If I just shrink that in a bit, shrink in the dollar index. Let me just get rid of that old trend line. You can see here there's very, very similar shape here between the dollar yuan, which is the offshore yuan. Okay, you've got a bit of an action like that, and it's pretty much the same looking deal here on the dollar index. So if you're looking for a correlating pair on the dollar yuan, look no further than the dollar index. Okay, that's where the action is. All right, now let me just give you a quick look at the general news out there before I flick you across to the MyFX Trading Hub. And just having a look here. So as you suspect, I mean, this is really nice market conditions, I feel. I mean, we do have Brexit, and that is a bit of a left field sort of issue. Puts a slight cloud over things. But otherwise, the market is moving into these sort of closer to these holiday markets where it's behaving extremely well. And as I'm saying, like, I like a move down in the currencies like Euro's doing at the moment, where it's nice and orderly. We get comments from the central bank, or the head of the central bank, saying growth is slowing. Basically, this thing's not going to be this high in 6 weeks. So to me, that's a really good sign. That's the good part. Then you come down to the bottom part, you've got Brexit. I mean, imagine having $1 for every bad or every Brexit article that was written in the last 2 years. You'd have your pockets full of cash. Now, there is a little bit of a dampener on the equities potentially. The GM plant in the US says it's going to cut jobs and production. I don't know if that's a political play, but it may have some impact on the Dow Jones as we go forward. We'll have to wait and see. And this is the article I've been sort of looking for is Trump says he expects to raise China tariffs, Wall Street Journal. So we are starting to hear again, because everything else has calmed down. Trump is coming back to China to sort of challenge them on the tariffs. We'll have to see how that plays out from here. Now, just having a look at the MyFX Trading Hub, get you prepared for today's trading. Now, if we come into looking at the next major opportunity, well, when we say next major opportunity too, don't get me misled and think you just trade the numbers. We're looking for these events, the upcoming events. So we've got 13 hours till the US consumer confidence numbers. These are potential events that could give the currencies momentum, and that's what we're looking for. We're not looking just to look for these numbers to drop and trade them. We're looking for a matchup of the current technical setup with those fundamental drivers. Right, Brexit continues, so just be aware that could really impact all pairs, dollar index and sterling crosses. But where the real activity is, and this is where, well, pretty much there isn't a lot of activity. To me, the daily outlook for the major currency pairs, there's been no shift at all in any of these pairs. If anything, dollar yen on the hourlies, yeah, sure, it's slowly going up, but on the daily and weeklies, it's only just making tiny inroads. Whereas euro, to me, is starting to look really, really good. Dollar index slowly edging higher. No surprise that these two pairs, okay, they directly oppositely correlate, okay, the dollar index and euro. Euro is 58.7% of this basket. So if it's going down, the dollar index should be going up, and that's exactly what's happening. All these other pairs, if you're sitting there and one of these pairs is your favourites, well, I'm sorry to say it, but at this point, they lack momentum, they lack direction, they lack drive, right? So if you're trading these other pairs, just sit on your hands and just wait, because you've got to wait for these economic numbers to come through, and that's when the currencies will move. And that's why we look at these fundamental drivers, or the fundamental economic numbers. So coming into today's trading, you look at the US consumer confidence. I think there is some financial stability report out of the RBNZ later on today. And that's where we sort of really head into, and then we start to get into the bigger numbers come through Wednesday. All right, so that's where we are now. Just on that, coming into Wednesday, I will be traveling to New York. So Mark will be taking over the MyFX Trading Hub, or the FX Market Insight, but I'll be back on the airwaves come probably Thursday, I'd say. Thursday, New York time, so maybe Friday, Asia time. All right, guys, that's it from me. Have a good trade day. It's pretty mellow, but as I mentioned, I think the real activity here is going to be on Euro. It does look like a very good opportunity, and I'll be updating the next best trade list very shortly. All right, guys, have a good trade day. We'll see you in the live trade zone. Cheerio.